This part 2 in the series of video discusses the brave actions of Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida in the United States in pushing back against the juggernaut of woke and LGBTQ propaganda. Viktor Orban, Prime Minister of Hungary since 2010, who is standing up to the German onslaught with the LGBTQ agenda, and President Putin of Russia, who is not surrendering Ukrainian kids of mixed marriages between Russians and German masquerader Ukrainians and letting them become children of the devil, which is what the Germans want to turn them into. Hello friends, this is Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini, where I provide unique analysis of world events based on the unmasked truth that after surrender, Germany continued World War II clandestinely and became a killing machine. I also provide true news that you will find nowhere else. In the part 1 video, we discussed why the Germans and German masqueraders work so hard to lead our people in American and British Commonwealth nations to sexual sins. Now let's discuss the brave actions of 3 political leaders in combating German wickedness. I've discussed President Putin's brave actions in my previous videos. I've described how Germans, in alliance with China and other alliance partners, are planning to start the Third World War against the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel. They wanted to make sure that Russia would be in no position to enter the war on the side of the United States, Britain, and Israel. The best way to do that was to engage Russia in a long-term war. Therefore, they instigated the Ukraine-Russia war with the help of the Nazi Zelensky of Ukraine, who agreed to let Germany install nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons to be used against Russia. They knew Russia would not allow that and would have to invade Ukraine to prevent that from happening. That's how Russia was provoked into war. We also see how brilliantly they managed world propaganda in labeling Russia as the aggressor in an unprovoked war against Ukraine and demonizing President Putin of Russia. They have been able to do that with the help of German masqueraders who are persons of German ancestry living in white countries in Europe and North America, around the world, and their global allies with whom they have nurtured their relationships, beginning with a few years after the end of Second World War. Incredible number of economic and other sanctions of all kinds possible have been imposed on Russia and its leaders, such that its economy has taken a beating. Finally, they've succeeded in inflicting another humiliation on President Putin by having the International Criminal Court issue an arrest warrant for him on Friday, March 17, 2023, citing his alleged involvement in the abduction of Ukrainian children. Who are these Ukrainian children who've been taken to Russia? President Putin knows very well from personal experience that if a German masquerader spouse in a mixed marriage with a person of other national background is given a free hand in raising their children, he or she will turn them into children of the devil like themselves. President Putin knows that from first-hand experience because he was married to a German masquerader spouse, and both his daughters from that marriage are now fully immersed in German satanic philosophies taught to them by their mother. He wants to avoid the same fate for the Ukrainian children from marriages between Russians with German masquerader Ukrainian spouses. Those are the Ukrainian children who've been taken to Russia. President Putin is willing to risk violating international law and be labeled a war criminal for violating human rights. He is indeed a very brave man and has my full support and admiration. He knows the German character very well and cannot be easily fooled by them. No doubt as the war drags on, the Germans will continue to invent more ways to heap further humiliation on Russia and President Putin with the help of their global alliance partners, even though Russia faces an existential threat from German and Chinese nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons. While some conservatives, such as Governor Ron DeSantis and other Republican governors, are holding the fort against German led propaganda against Christian and traditional family values, Prime Minister Viktor Orban is a strong bulwark against the same German led EU onslaught in Europe. In a 35-minute speech at the Conservative Political Action Conference in Dallas, Texas in August 2022, Viktor Orban framed the issues facing Western civilization correctly when he stated, "The horrors of Nazism and communism happened because some Western states in continental Europe abandoned their Christian values. And today's progressives, that is the very positive sounding label German masqueraders and their other lawless allies, or those who perverted laws, have given themselves, they're planning to do the same. They want to give up on Western values and create a new world, a post Western world. Who's going to stop them if you don't?" German masqueraders and their allies in the United States have passed laws to keep the Bible and Christianity out of schools, colleges, and government. That is the kind of stuff Mr. Orban was railing against. He also spoke about the assault on traditional marriage, indoctrinating kids with gender identity confusion, and even promotion of abortion. He said, "Hungary shall protect the institution of marriage as the union of one man and one woman. And the mother is a woman, the father is a man, and leave our kids alone. Full stop. End of discussion," Orban said. He thus flatly rejected the idea that adults or kids can identify with a gender they were not assigned at birth. Homosexuality is legal in Hungary for both men and women, and discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and sex is banned in the country. But same-sex couples do not have the same legal rights as heterosexual couples. For example, same-sex marriage is banned. In June 2021, Hungary passed an anti-LGBT law that banned homosexual and transsexual propaganda, effective from July 1. The law has been condemned by 17 of the 27 EU countries so far. Also, in July 2021, the EU Commission started legal action against Hungary and Poland for violations of fundamental rights of LGBTQI people. Mr. Orban is a very courageous man to take on the EU Commission. LGBT content and displays for minors are also banned in Hungary. Hungary's laws have become a model for laws for some states in the United States. President Putin had passed similar laws in Russia in 2013, though he does not have to worry about being sued by the European Union. Mr. Orban also spoke about illegal immigration. He said, "We were the first ones in Europe who said no to illegal migration and stopped the invasion of illegal migrants. We believe that stopping illegal migration is necessary to protect our nation. To stop illegal migration, we actually built that wall." In his other speeches, Mr. Orban has expressed his views about racial mixing. He stated in a speech in July 2022 in Romania, "These countries, that is of Europe, that have large numbers of immigrants, are no longer nations. They are nothing more than a conglomeration of peoples." Referring to Hungary, Orban said, "We are not a mixed race, and we do not want to become a mixed race." Asked about Orban's comments, European Commission's German President Ursula von der Leyen noted, "All EU member states, including Hungary, signed up to common global values. Discriminating on the basis of race is to trample on those values," she said. "The European Union is built on equality, tolerance, justice, and fair play." What hypocritical words from von der Leyen. Germany has been pushing dark-haired, black-haired, dark-skinned Germans out of Germany for many decades to migrate to other countries so that Germany would be left a country of blondes only. While they have immigrants from non-white countries, white Germans do not marry interracially, while German masqueraders have used threats to force Americans, Britons, French, and citizens of other nations to marry interracially. Mr. Orban is certainly a man of exemplary courage, a straight shooter, familiar with German agenda, and is not afraid to speak out and do what is right and best for his country. Americans and Britons would do very well if we elected leaders like him. But it will not happen because of the presence of large numbers of German masqueraders in our countries and how, by controlling the immigration process, they've packed the country with non-whites who are allied with them. What Prime Minister Viktor Orban has accomplished in Hungary, Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida has been accomplishing in the state of Florida. And just as the German manipulated European Union is going after Mr. Orban, German masqueraders, American bulldogs are going after Mr. DeSantis. These American bulldogs are the state's local LGBTQ group, Equality Florida, the ACLU, that is American Civil Liberties Union Florida chapter, and the NAACP of Miami. It's a good thing Florida is currently blessed with solid Republican majorities where legislators are aware of the German masqueraders' agenda, who in the media are given different names such as the left or who cunningly label themselves as progressives. This enables Floridians to pass common sense laws that try to restrict the influence of their destructive philosophies. What I admire about Governor DeSantis is his approach of confronting the evil in the most vigorous ways possible on all fronts. None of the perversions practiced among themselves by the LGBTQ crowd are banned, but this vile crowd is attempting to expose minor children in schools and through deviant entertainment shows to catch them young and draw them into their lifestyle by making it appear commonplace and mainstream. This crowd inflates statistics about the number of LGBTQ students in Florida schools. According to their inflated statistics, there are about 2.84 million students in Florida schools. About 114,000 identify themselves as LGBTQ, or about 4.01%, out of which 9,050 identify themselves as trans youth, or about 0.32%. These are 2020 statistics. I have seen the number of trans youths inflated to 16,000 from 9,050 in Florida for 2022. My point is that less than 4% of the population wants to impose knowledge about its vile lifestyle on the remaining 96% of the student body. It is a battle to indoctrinate the very young and vulnerable to draw them into their deviant and physically and emotionally harmful lifestyle. No wonder the suicide rate among those youth living such lifestyle is 9 times higher than the average. Now, these are the strong actions Governor Ron DeSantis and Florida legislators have taken to confront these evils. First, Florida enacted the Parental Rights in Education Act in March 2022, which opponents have dubbed the Don't Say Gay law. It bans teaching about sexual orientation and gender in the classroom from kindergarten through the 3rd grade in a way that is not age or developmentally appropriate for students. All materials used to teach reproductive health have to be approved by the Florida Department of Education. The department recently banned the teaching of the new AP African American Studies course. Republican lawmakers are working to expand the provisions of the bill to heavily restrict in-school discussions about sexual orientation or gender identity until 9th grade when most students are 14 or 15. Teachers would be banned from using pronouns to address students that differ from those they were assigned at birth. Staff would also be prohibited from sharing their own preferred pronouns if they do not correspond to his or her sex. Here is how the LGBTQ crowd insidiously tries to push its agenda, which Governor DeSantis in Florida and other states are trying to put the brakes on. A Republican senator during a state Senate hearing in February 2022 gave an example of a math problem that would be banned that mentions that a child has 2 moms or 2 dads. Schools would essentially be barred from depicting different from the normative family structure for developing class problems for instruction in Florida. Florida also allows students to opt out of sexual health lessons. Remember, as explained in Part 1 video, the German masquerader agenda is to promote sexual sins in America and British Commonwealth nations so that we will drive God away from us and lose his protection. Then it will be easy for Germans and German masqueraders to conquer us. Number 2. On April 11, 2023, Florida Senate passed a bill that would block children from being admitted to drag shows or drag queen shows called adult live performances. The law would prohibit local governments from issuing public permits for events that could expose children to the targeted behavior. The kind of filth children were being exposed to is explained in how the bill defines adult live performances. These are defined as any show, exhibition, or other presentation that is performed in front of a live audience and in whole or in part depicts or simulates nudity, sexual conduct, sexual excitement, specific sexual activities, lewd conduct, or the lewd exposure of prosthetic or imitation genitals or breasts. The bill would allow state regulators to immediately suspend or revoke licenses of restaurants, bars, and other venues that violate the law. Number 3. Governor Desantis has taken Florida among the leading states that are fighting to minimize abortions. From the early 1960s, when the German masqueraders teamed up with the Germans to take over the lands of the United States and British Commonwealth nations for themselves by killing all whites of non-German ancestry, abortion has been a prime strategy for them in controlling growth of such white population. They have forced 30 to 40 million white babies to be aborted from 1970 to date, in addition to murdering 10 million white adults and children. On April 13, 2023, Governor Ron DeSantis signed a 6-week abortion ban, with exceptions for rape and incest up to 15 weeks, though evidence of those crimes such as a police report or a restraining order has to be presented. However, the legislation won't take effect until a legal challenge to the current ban takes its course before the state Supreme Court. The state's position is not where I would like it to be, but it is a step in the right direction. Number 4. As already stated, German masquerader goal is to take control of the United States and British Commonwealth nations for themselves by killing all whites of non-German ancestry. To accomplish that task, they need all the minority allies they can get. The task is not difficult for them because millions of them have participated in murders and received reward from masqueraders. The only protection they can get is from the masquerader side because the other side wants to bring them to justice by executing them. To justify killing the non-masquerader side, they must make minorities believe that they are the perpetual victims of racial discrimination. They don't want past wounds to heal, but rather want to keep them fresh. For that purpose, they must continually whip up racial hatreds and teach it to children in school. That is the diabolical purpose of teaching AP courses on African American studies, which Governor DeSantis has banned in Florida. Slavery is American history. That cannot be hidden. The non-masquerader side is not trying to hide it, but teaching only one side of a twisted version just to keep the old wounds raw, instead of allowing them to heal because of the tremendous gains African Americans have made. Africans were slaves in Jamaica and the Caribbean. They've enjoyed freedom and self-governance for more than 6 decades. African Americans were slaves too. Compare the economic gains they have made against the gains Jamaicans have made. One can see that the teaching of critical race theory is nothing but a propaganda tool to keep racial hatreds in America at the boiling point so that African Americans will always be ready to fight the non-masquerader side. Critical race theory is a legal theory that examines systematic racism as a part of American institutions. Woke means having or marked by an active awareness of systemic injustices and prejudices, especially those involving the treatment of ethnic, racial, or sexual minorities. In his inauguration speech on January 3, 2023, for his second term as governor of Florida, Governor DeSantis said, "We reject this woke ideology. We seek normalcy, not philosophical lunacy. We will not allow reality, facts, and truth to become optional. We will never surrender to the woke mob. Florida is where woke goes to die. Governor Desantis does what he says. He has blocked the teaching of the AP course on African American studies in schools to prevent indoctrinating kids to hate white Americans, not unlike the Palestinians have been taught to hate the Jews. After all, Germans pulled the levers of the Palestinians and most African Americans by controlling their leadership, who are murderers. Of course, Floridians should have expected a reaction from African Americans and the LGBTQ crowd, with German masqueraders pulling their levers. Both groups have issued travel advisories to not visit Florida. The Florida chapter of the National Association of the Advancement of Colored People, or NAACP, had a meeting in Orlando and on March 26, 2023 weekend and unanimously voted to request a travel advisory for Black Americans coming to Florida. They believe it is best that Black Americans do not come to Florida. The Lee County NAACP President James Muwakil said they believe it is best that Black Americans do not come to Florida because of the anti-Black legislation that has been present in Florida politics. He gave examples such as Governor Ron DeSantis criticizing the contents of the AP African American Studies course, and soon after the College Board stripping the planned curriculum. Our question to Governor DeSantis is, what sort of future are you fostering for Black Americans throughout Florida while eradicating our historical contributions to this nation? There is no feel-good version of the horrors and inequalities that Black Americans have faced or continue to face, said NAACP Florida State Conference Chair Adora Obi-Nuwezi. LGBTQ group Equality Florida issued a similar advisory to not visit the state of Florida, saying that it took the extraordinary step after receiving a wave of safety inquiries following the passage of laws that are hostile to the LGBTQ community, restrict access to reproductive health care, repeal gun safety laws, foment racial prejudice, and attack public education by banning books and censoring curriculum. Actually, German masqueraders are trying to use the NAACP and LGBTQ groups to kill two birds with one stone. First of all, they are advancing their agenda of fomenting racial hatreds for white Americans of non-German ancestry. Secondly, they are trying to hurt Florida's economy. The reason for their attempts to hurt Florida's economy is that Germans have been incensed with me for the past 7 to 8 years. Germans had bought stock in some of the most profitable US corporations about 2 to 20 years ago by hundreds of billions of dollars. The US government simply impounded those stocks and has kept them as compensation for me for unprecedented discrimination throughout my life. About 7 to 8 years ago, they finally realized that they have lost all those shares forever. Since then, they and German masqueraders have been trying their best to reduce the value of those assets. Some of those assets are tied up in businesses in Florida because that's where I live. German masqueraders with threats have forced many Floridians to move out, but more right-thinking people have actually moved into Florida and visited the state, so that Florida's population is booming and businesses are thriving. NAACP and Equality Florida's travel advisories against visiting Florida are simply in pursuit of that strategy. My appeal to right-thinking Americans is to reject the divisive tactics of NAACP and Equality Florida and enjoy the beautiful weather and sunshine in the state in ever great numbers. It's a great state to move into. You don't have to shovel snow, and you can enjoy great sunshine throughout the year. That's why more people are visiting Florida than ever before and also moving into the state. We heartily welcome you to the state of Florida. And number 5, Governor Desantis has also been very sensible about illegal immigration, like Viktor Orban in Hungary. To send a message to cities and states that have called themselves sanctuary cities, he has sent illegal migrants to those states and cities so that they experience firsthand the burden involved in giving sanctuary to large numbers of illegal immigrants. Now you know why I admire Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, Prime Minister Viktor Orban of Hungary, and President Vladimir Putin of Russia for standing up to Germans and German masqueraders and combating their diabolical, nefarious, and destructive agenda for our nations. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please continue to watch my videos on important world events, World War III watch, politics, international business, how Bible prophecy is playing an important role in world affairs, advice on health and medical problems, and much more for in-depth and insightful analysis. Please also subscribe to my YouTube and Facebook channels Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini to view and get information on the latest videos.